Tip number one for new producers: a good track will always trump a good mix. What I mean by this is you can have the best mix down in the world, but it's an awful track, it won't get played. If you've got a good track with a semi-mediocre mix, it will get played. So spend more time on that melody and getting that sounding right, that main part, because that's going to do more emotionally to Dave on the dance floor than you dialing in a perfect hi-hat with the EQ. So yeah, that's not saying do a terrible mix, I'm just saying a good track will always trump a good mix. Tip number two for new producers: don't compress everything, it's not needed. A lot of samples are already compressed to start with, but choose when to do your compression and do it with purpose. Just compressing the hell out of everything like removes the life and the dynamics out of your mix, and quite frankly it sounds terrible. And if you don't know how to use a compressor, my suggestion is don't go near one, because the amount of times that I see people using a compressor and it actually makes the sound worse is a lot. So when you add a compressor in there, turn it on and off and gain match to make sure you're actually making that sound better in the mix. Number three for new producers is use reference tracks. Now, some people struggle with this. What I would suggest doing is using them for ideas, not letting those ideas control how your track sounds and completely copying what the reference track is, although that can be useful and helpful too if you are learning to produce. But using them for ideas and inspiration, and also using them for leveling. So obviously, how's the level of the kick, the clap, the leads, and using just the one reference track as well when you come in to do this mix down, because if you're using multiple different reference tracks back and forth, your levels are going to be all over the place, because certain kicks and claps will be different in certain tracks and stuff like that. So yeah, using reference tracks. Tip number four for new producers is create a sound that you actually enjoy making. There's no point in just trying to create trance or whatever music you're making to conform with something that's popular in the scene at that time that you don't like, because all that's going to happen is you're not going to enjoy that process of making music. So find a sound that you like, experiment, and the only way to find sounds that you like and make you sound like you as a producer is to actually go with that and experiment and see what you really like the sound of. Don't worry about what everyone else is doing. Find something that you like and the whole process will be a lot more fun. Tip number five for new producers is stop comparing yourself to everybody else and what other producers are doing. One of the worst things and the most disheartening things you can do is compare yourself to a producer that's been doing it for 10, 15, 20 years. You've only started a year ago and you're comparing yourself to their mixes, who they're getting signed to and stuff like that. It's going to dishearten you straight away. Understand that it does not just come overnight and that you have to put the work in. So stop comparing yourself to what everyone else is doing and just focus that energy on making good music. Tip number six for new producers is understand that you're going to have good and bad days in the studio. It's not what it looks like on social media where everything's going well for someone, you know, they're killing it in the studio today. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that after 1 year. It doesn't work like that after 10 years. It doesn't work like that after 20 years. So understand that, you know, you're going to have bad days where you've got no ideas going on. Everything that you make sounds terrible. And yeah, just basically understanding that happens and being able to come away from it and not let it affect you too much. So if you let it affect you too much, all that's going to do is it's going to go into the next time you go into the studio and you make more terrible music, then that's going to happen and it's just going to spiral out of control. So understand you're going to have good and bad days. Tip number 7 for new producers: money spent on learning is always going to be better than money spent on just the next best new plugin. If you don't know how to use a plugin or you don't know how to use a synthesizer, it's pointless. So you'd be better spending that money on learning, or spending the time on learning that synth that you do have already, and you will get a much better sound and it will help you massively in the studio on saving time, getting the sound that you want and all these other things. So yeah, if you're going to invest some money, do it on learning, or if you're going to invest time, do it on learning. It's going to be the biggest improvement to your track. Tip number 8 for new producers is don't force it. If you get into the studio and nothing's coming out musically, Instead of just wasting time and keep trying to force it, go and use that time elsewhere. There's always something you can be doing with production. Go and sort out your sample libraries. Go and find samples that you like. Go and find presets that you like. Set up templates. Be productive with that time so that when you are feeling it, you've got all those sounds, samples and everything else to hand ready so that you can smash out all your ideas and get a lot done in that session. Tip number 9 for new producers: a fancy studio is not needed to get started with production. Over the last year, I've been producing on these things and I've got more music done and made in that time than I ever have. It's all about getting productive. Obviously, it's the ideal situation and a fancy studio would be great, but it's not needed to start learning production. You can easily get started with a laptop, a set of headphones and a DAW like Ableton Suite. Tip number 10 for new producers: you are going to make terrible tracks at first, and that's fine. That's how you learn. And I mean bad tracks. They're not going to sound good. So just embrace it, enjoy it, have them for later on in 5 years' time when you can, go back to them and compare them to how you've improved today. So yeah, be aware that that's going to be the case. Don't get disheartened by it. It's not an easy skill to learn music production at good level. So they're going to sound terrible. Enjoy it, laugh at them, show them your friends, let them laugh at them too. Tip number 11 for new producers is try to separate the ideas stage to the mixing stage. Now this is easier said than done because you're wanting to obviously hear what it's going to sound like finished. And if you're new to production, you're not going to get a finished polished sound straight away. That will come with time. And as you start to build tracks, they will start to sound more and more finished and more professional in the draft stage, so to speak, than they will in the earlier days. If you can try to separate them, getting a nice bass sound, getting a nice bass idea, nice melody written, don't worry about the EQ and stuff just yet. That stuff will come with time, and switching between the two, you're going to end up double dipping anyway, because when you add in a new element, you might be EQing it differently anyway. So try to separate ideas and the mixing stage as much as you can. Tip number 12 for new producers: try to finish tracks all the way through. If you're sat there, just every time you open up a session, you're just doing kick and bass, and then kick and bass again, and kick and bass again, you're not learning the full process of arrangements, different ideas, mix downs, all of these other things that make up a track. So even if it sounds terrible, try to get it finished so that you're practicing all the different stages of each production. Tip number 13 for new producers: head over to allanmorrowstudios.com, grab yourself some stuff to help you learn so that I don't have to get a real job, and then stop all of these free tips and tricks. All jokes aside, if you are looking to learn, production courses and stuff like that will help you massively. I've seen people who have done some of the courses on the website getting to where I was in 5 years in the space of a year. So yeah, if you would like to go over there, grab yourself some stuff to help with the production, be massively appreciated. As always, thanks to everyone who already does. If you don't want to, then I guess just keep watching these free tips. Cheers.